Imagine stepping out of a yellow cab into the bustling streets of 1970s Manhattan. The air is electric with possibility, and the night is young. As you round the corner onto West 54th Street, you're suddenly enveloped by a pulsating rhythm that seems to make the pavement throb beneath your feet. The source? A converted theater with a glittering marquee that reads Studio 54. It's not just any nightclub, it's the epicenter of New York's cultural explosion. For 33 glorious months between 1977 and 80, Studio 54 reigned supreme as the world's most exclusive and exhilarating night spot. It was a place where celebrities rubbed shoulders with drag queens, where Wall Street titans danced along starving artists, and where the lines between fantasy and reality blurred in a haze of disco beats and glitter. Today, we're peeling back the velvet rope and stepping into the wild, wonderful world of Studio 54. The birth of a legend. In the spring of 1977, New York City was a cauldron of creative energy, simmering with the promise of reinvention. From this fertile ground, two young entrepreneurs from Brooklyn, Steve Rubell and Ian Schrager, would provide a cultural phenomenon that defined an era. With just $400,000 and 6 weeks to work their magic, they transformed an old CBS television studio into what would become the most famous nightclub in history, Studio 54. The genius of Rubell and Schrager lay in their ability to create an atmosphere of exclusivity and excitement. They understood that people didn't just want to go out, they wanted to be a part of something extraordinary. Studio 54 wasn't just a nightclub, it was a nightly theatrical production where the guests were both audience and performers. The timing couldn't have been more perfect. The sexual revolution was in full swing, disco music was at its zenith, and New York City was emerging from a financial crisis, hungry for escapism and glamour. Studio 54 became a haven for celebrities, artists, and beautiful people, all seeking the ultimate party experience. The club's design was revolutionary. Schrager and Rubell enlisted the help of Broadway set designers to create a space that could transform throughout the night. The infamous Man in the Moon with a cocaine spoon sculpture hung from the ceiling, while a bridge over the dance floor could be lowered for impromptu performances. The guest list, a who's who of 70s culture.
Just hanging out in New York?
Yes, Studio 54.
Come here a lot?
Oh, God, yes.
Why?
Because, I like the atmosphere of Studio 54. I've been to a lot of discotheques, and I don't like them.
What's the difference?
All around the world, I don't know the feeling. I mean, the excitement of the props coming down and the balcony. It's just exciting, honestly.
At the heart of Studio 54's mystique was its legendary door policy. The club's doorman, Mark Benecke, became one of the most powerful people in New York City nightlife, wielding the power to make or break someone's evening with a simple nod or shake of the head. Celebrities were generally given preferential treatment, but even they weren't guaranteed entry if they didn't meet the night's vibe. The list of famous patrons reads like a who's who of 70s pop culture. Andy Warhol was a regular, often holding court in the corner banquette with his entourage of beautiful misfits. Music legends like Mick Jagger, David Bowie, and Diana Ross were frequent guests, often taking to the DJ booth to spin their favorite tracks. Hollywood royalty like Liza Minnelli, Warren Beatty, and Jack Nicholson could be spotted on any given night, mingling with the masses on the dance floor. Even political figures weren't immune to Studio 54's allure. Margaret Trudeau, wife of the Canadian Prime Minister, was famously photographed partying at the club, causing a minor international incident. Truman Capote was known to spend entire evenings perched at the bar, observing the spectacle with a vodka in hand. One of the most iconic moments occurred on Bianca Jagger's birthday in 1977. She made a grand entrance atop a white horse, creating an image that became synonymous with the club's over-the-top nature. Behind the velvet rope, the secrets of Studio 54. While the dance floor was the heart of Studio 54, much of the real action happened in the club's more private areas. The basement, known as the Rubber Room, due to its rubber-lined walls, was where the wildest parties took place. This area was reserved for the most elite guests and was the site of legendary debauchery that would make even the most seasoned partier blush. Drug use was rampant and largely tolerated within the club. Cocaine was the drug of choice, often consumed openly on the dance floor. The club even had a special area called the Coke Apartment, where VIP guests could indulge away from prying eyes. Quaaludes, affectionately known as disco biscuits, were also popular among the Studio 54 crowd, adding to the surreal, dreamlike quality of the nights. The club's anything-goes attitude extended to sexual encounters as well. The balcony area became notorious for public sexual acts, and the basement hosted even more explicit activities. This openness about sexuality was part of what made Studio 54 so revolutionary for its time, pushing boundaries and challenging societal norms in ways that would be unthinkable today. Despite its reputation for excess, Studio 54 was also known for its tight security and discretion. Cameras were strictly forbidden inside the club, which allowed celebrities to let loose without fear of paparazzi. The spectacle, parties and performances.
Do you remember it well, dancing there?
I do. You know, it was the first time I ever saw drugs.
Really?
Yeah, I couldn't figure out why people were putting flour up their noses. I thought that was the stupidest.
Studio 54 wasn't just about dancing and drinking, it was about creating unforgettable experiences. The club was known for its elaborate themed parties, each more outrageous than the last. For one Halloween party, they filled the entrance with 4 tons of glitter, creating a shimmering wonderland for guests to wade through. Another time, they brought in tanks filled with mermaids and mermen for a nautical-themed bash. Live performances were a regular occurrence. Grace Jones was known to perform her avant-garde shows there, sometimes covered in body paint or dressed in elaborate costumes. On any given night, you might see Donna Summer belting out her latest disco hit or the Village People leading the crowd in a rousing rendition of YMCA. The club's New Year's Eve parties were particularly legendary. For one such event, they lowered a giant disco ball from the ceiling at midnight, showering the crowd with thousands of balloons and confetti. These spectacles weren't just parties, they were immersive experiences that transported guests into a world of fantasy and excess. The fall of an empire.
They were given the stiffest sentence ever meted out for tax evasion at the time in New York. They served more than a year in prison on a 3.5-year sentence. And few people defined rise and fall more than they did. Rubel sadly died of complications of HIV in the late 80s. Traeger to this day is a great real estate baron and hotel owner.
Studio 54's reign at the top of New York nightlife was as meteoric as it was brief. In December 1978, the club was raided by the IRS. Agents found garbage bags full of cash and drugs hidden in the ceiling, leading to the arrest of Rubel and Traeger on charges of tax evasion, obstruction of justice, and conspiracy. The legal troubles coincided with changing tastes in music and culture. Disco was falling out of favor, giving way to new wave and early hip-hop. The AIDS crisis was beginning to cast a shadow over the free love ethos of the 70s, marking the end of an era of sexual liberation and carefree hedonism. In February 1980, Rubel and Traeger were sentenced to 3.5 years in prison. They ultimately served 13 months. The night before they went to prison, they threw one last legendary party at Studio 54. Diana Ross serenaded the crowd from the DJ booth, and regulars like Liza Minnelli, Farrah Fawcett, and Richard Gere came to bid farewell to an era. Cultural impact. Though its time at the top was brief, Studio 54's impact on popular culture can't be overstated. It represented the pinnacle of 1970s excess and hedonism, a last hurrah before the more conservative 1980s. The club's influence can be seen in fashion, music, and nightlife culture to this day. It helped launch or solidify the careers of many famous designers, artists, and performers. Fashion designers like Halston and Calvin Klein were regulars, and their designs became synonymous with the Studio 54 aesthetic. Many clubs have tried to recreate its magic, but none have quite captured the unique combination of exclusivity, creativity, and cultural zeitgeist that made Studio 54 so special. Since its closure, Studio 54 has been the subject of numerous books, documentaries, and even a feature film. Its story continues to fascinate new generations, representing a moment in time when New York City was at its most glamorous and decadent. Now it's time to hear from you. If you could go back in time and visit Studio 54 for a night, who would you hope to see there? Let us know in the comments section below.